Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin our discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 8 important articles. Especially the first 4 articles are very comprehensive and detailed, and they are important both for your prelims and mains. So let's cover them in complete detail so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are liking our initiatives, benefiting from them, do support us with your likes, your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now, before we start, don't forget today Unacademy marks its 9th anniversary. So tonight we have planned a grand celebration, Unacademy Pratishtha, at 7 p.m. on UPSC Unstoppable's YouTube channel. We will go live with your top educators, a lot of influencers, a lot of exciting events. So do ensure you tune in. So search for UPSC Unstoppables on YouTube and you will find the live stream. You just have to click on notify me. And as soon as the session goes live at 7 p.m. tonight, you will get notified. So do join us for a lot of fun and a lot of exciting reveals as well. So with this, let's get started with the analysis by looking at this important article from page number 10. This article refers to the maritime shipping laws and the coastal shipping laws of India. See, in India, merchant shipping, that is commercial cargo shipping, is regulated by an old, outdated law from 1958. Merchant Shipping Act of 1958. It is what regulates merchant shipping in our country. Then when you look at coastal shipping, where in the coastal areas, shipping is promoted for connectivity and transportation. So coastal shipping in our country is regulated under the Coasting Vessels Act, which is a British era legislation from 1838. This shows how unfortunate it is that we still have colonial era laws governing us, regulating us. So obviously, a law from 1838, even though it has been amended, it is never suited for the current times and the current context. The Merchant Shipping Act as well does not take into account the modern advances that have happened in global commercial shipping. So how can we rely on these old, outdated laws? Because I hope you know that shipping industry plays a critical role in the global economy. Most of the global trade is carried through ships, and also shipping plays a critical role in transportation, in human transportation as well, along with providing connectivity and improving cargo transport. So shipping industry is quite literally the backbone of the economy, and yet the industry is governed by these outdated laws. Merchant shipping through the Merchant Shipping Act of 1958 and coastal shipping through a colonial law, the Coasting Vessels Act of 1838. So it is high time that we replace these laws. Why? Because these outdated laws, they don't allow India to match with the global standards that have been laid down under various international conventions. See, India has signed and ratified few conventions under the International Maritime Organization. So we have few global commitments to be met when it comes to merchant shipping. But unfortunately, we are not able to match those standards because these outdated laws do not provide for such provisions. Simply amending the law will not serve the purpose. You need to ensure that you replace it with a new law. It does not take into account marine pollution. It does not take into account training, merchant vessel training or marine training. Because today there are many private institutes which have propped up. Because initially, merchant vessel training, shipping training was restricted to the government sector. It was part of the union list, and the government would look after any form of training to merchant seafarers. But after we liberalized our economy, we have opened up this for private participation. So there are many private training institutes which have come up and they are completely unregulated. This is resulting in a lot of fraud where our country's youth, especially from rural area, they are being defrauded by these fraudulent training institutes. So don't you think it's high time that we update our laws and address these critical issues? Tackling marine pollution, regulating the training of merchant seafarers, matching up to global standards and following our commitments under international conventions. This is a critical obligation of the government. And also these laws, they don't account for the new kinds of ships and vessels that have come out in recent times. Under the outdated laws, registration of ships is a nightmare for ship owners. It has affected ease of doing business. It has restricted foreign investment in the shipping industry of India. Because when the regulations are so rigid, investors will be scared away. They'll be pushed away. Even recycling of ships has become a regulatory challenge because of these outdated laws. Even though India is a global hub for recycling of ships, it's a nightmare for the companies involved in recycling to get the registration done, to get the required permissions and approvals. So if we have to address all these flaws and challenges that we are facing, we need to replace these laws. And that is exactly what the government of India has in mind. The government of India has proposed 2 new laws to replace these outdated laws. In the ongoing winter session, the government will be tabling these new bills in the parliament. The Merchant Shipping Bill 2024, Coastal Shipping Bill 2024. So these proposed laws will replace the outdated laws. So hence it becomes very important to quickly examine the provisions that are proposed by the government in these 2 new bills. So let's carry out a quick and effective analysis of the provisions of these new bills. There can be a possible prelims or even mains question related to this topic. Under the Merchant Shipping Act of 1958, as I told you, it does not account for the new form of ships, the new designs, the new vessels which have come out. So this has become a nightmare for ship owners when it comes to registering them. The old law largely favored Indian flagged vessels, and it would create a disadvantage for foreign flagged vessels. If you look at merchant shipping industry, ships are owned by owners in some country, but they carry the flag of some other country. The prime reason is they look out for such jurisdictions where regulations are easy, registration process is easy, and also the fees and cost involved is lower. So this is exactly what India is also trying to do. We are trying to ease up registration of ships and all types of vessels by expanding the definition of ships and vessels. So the new proposed law will provide for an easier registration process, which will allow even foreign ship owners to easily register ships in India. It will even allow NRIs and overseas citizens of India to own ships and register them in India with a foreign flag. Previous restriction was under the old law. If a ship had to be registered in India, it had to bear an Indian flag. This was a huge limitation. Around the world, the standard is that the ship might be owned by someone in some country. They will register in some country, but the flag would be of a different country. They would get insurance in a different country. This is how the shipping industry operates. But India had these restrictive policies. This was deterring investors, ship owners, and it was affecting foreign investment into our country. So now with the new proposed bill, the process of registration would be simplified. Foreign investments would be encouraged. It would make it easier for NRIs, OCIs, and foreign investors to register their ships in India, even though they bear the flag of a different country. So this will facilitate ease of doing business. Is this clear? Is this understood? The new bill will also enlarge the definition of ships and vessels to account for the newer models and variants of merchant ships, cargo ships, and even the leisure and luxury ships which are in use, right? They play a big role in tourism, in recreational activities. So India would be further encouraging such activities to drive economic growth and economic development. Because don't forget, India has a vast resource, which is our long coastline. India has a 7,500 kilometers plus coastline with 2 island territories, Andaman, Nicobar and Lakshadweep. And despite having this strategic advantage, we are not fully utilizing our potential. We face the Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea, and this is a golden opportunity for India. So to tap the full potential of this, we need to revise and update these old laws. That is exactly what the government has proposed. Make it easier to register the ships, bring in foreign investments, make it easier for the ship owners, and ensure that we include a large variety of ships and vessels, providing for easy registration. Then even with regard to recycling, as I said, though India is a hub of ship recycling, after Bangladesh, India is the second largest hub for the ship recycling industry. I'm sure you would have heard about the Alang shipyard in Gujarat, which is one of the most sought out ship recycling yards in the world. Most of the outdated ships in the world, they come to Alang in India to die, where the ships are recycled and eventually wrecked. So this is a big industry in India, though there are environmental concerns, pollution related concerns with regard to our ship recycling industry. The companies involved in the process of ship recycling, they find the regulatory provisions, they find them very complicated. Because when they are bringing a ship for recycling from some other part of the world, they need to register the ship in India. Problem is, it's not easy for them under the old law to get registration done, because it's an old ship which will raise safety risk, pollution risk, and as a result, these companies don't get easy approvals and permissions. So now the new law will introduce a temporary registration provision, a one-time registration, so that these old ships which are headed towards Indian shipyards for recycling, they can easily get a temporary registration done, and thus it can facilitate the recycling of these ships. So it will be a big boost for India's recycling industry, the ship recycling industry, and it would end up creating numerous jobs as well. Then to deal with the environmental concerns, the pollution concerns associated with marine shipping, the new law has some very good provisions. See, there are few international conventions which I will take you through, and India has signed them. We are party to them. But unfortunately, we are not able to match those standards because of the outdated laws. So through the new law which we are proposing, India wants to follow the highest standards of marine pollution, to tackle marine pollution. For example, if you look at marine fuel, one concern with marine fuel is its high sulfur content. Currently, under the old outdated law, the sulfur content is allowed up to 3.5%, which is very high. So the new law will bring down the sulfur content to just 0.5%, thus significantly addressing the concern of marine pollution because of marine fuel, which often leaks out from the ships. Then India is proposing a complete ban on the usage of single-use plastics on ships that are headed towards India. Ships carrying Indian flags, ships getting registered in India, ships headed towards India, they will have to follow this obligation that on board these ships, single-use plastics cannot be used. So this is a very good provision that is being pushed by the government. Then we also have a new portal, an online portal being launched by the government of India, the Swachh Sagar portal. Now this portal can be used by those ships headed towards India. They just have to register on this portal and update the waste that they are carrying with them. Obviously, seafarers, they spend a lot of time out at sea. So that would have generated a lot of waste, from recyclable to non-biodegradable waste. Eventually, they dock at ports for refueling and resupplies, and that is where the ships dispose their waste. The problem is, we didn't have a system where the ships could give an early warning to the ports to be prepared for the kind of waste that they were bringing. Now, this was leading to unnecessary delays at ports for clearance, for docking, and it was affecting port operations as well. So now, under the new law, India is mandating that every ship headed towards India, they have to mandatorily register on the Swachh Sagar online portal and update the port authorities before their arrival regarding what kind of waste they are disposing, so that port authorities can be prepared to receive that waste and dispose that in a scientific manner. So this again is a great initiative. So India is party to several conventions under the International Maritime Organization. Now please make a note of these conventions. The Civil Liability Convention, the Convention on Limitation of Liability on Maritime Claims, the Bunker Convention, MARPOL or Marine Pollution Convention, also known as the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, and finally the Wreck Removal Convention. These are conventions that India has signed and ratified under the International Maritime Organization. They all deal with aspects of marine pollution and environmental safety. But we are not able to follow the standards that are laid down under these conventions because of the outdated law. So the new law will ensure that we can match up the environmental and marine safety standards as per these global conventions. So that is a big development for India. Then coming to the welfare, safety and well-being of our seafarers. I don't know if you know this. Today, India is one of the largest contributors to seafarers in the world. Merchant shipping around the world is dependent on Indian labor. It is Indian seafarers who account for the largest workforce. So we have 285,000 Indians working around the world on ships around the world. But what is unfortunate is that under the old law, welfare initiatives for seafarers was provided only for those working on Indian flagged vessels. If an Indian seafarer was working only on an Indian flagged vessel, only then they could access the welfare benefits and initiatives. If they are working on foreign flagged vessels, they don't get any of these welfare initiatives and benefits. So this is a big disservice because 85% of our seafarers, they are working on foreign flagged vessels. That is the reality. So the law has to stay in tune with the current realities, right? When you have 285,000 seafarers working around the world on thousands of vessels around the world, 85% of them are working on foreign flagged vessels. How can you leave them out of the welfare benefits? Just because there is an old law, a provision which states that only those working on Indian flagged vessels will get the benefits. So this is exclusionary. It was affecting the social security, the welfare, the well-being of Indian seafarers. So now the government wants to change this. The new law will ensure that all the Indian seafarers who are contributing to the global merchant shipping industry will get the benefits of all these welfare schemes, social security initiatives, and it will guarantee their welfare and safety and well-being. So this is another important provision. Then coming to marine training or merchant shipping training, this was largely preserved for the public sector because under the Union List of 7th Schedule of the Indian Constitution, merchant shipping training was a subject under the Union government. Only government agencies under Ministry of Shipping would carry out these training programs many years ago. But after India opened up its economy, liberalized and globalized its economy, we have allowed for private participation in this sector, and many private training institutes have come up across the country. You might have seen advertisements and marketing initiatives as well by many training institutes where they're trying to attract new students and new trainees. Now, the problem is this entire industry is unregulated. There are many cases where Indian youth have been defrauded by such institutes, especially rural youth. They have been promised lucrative jobs on foreign shores, on foreign ships with good salaries. And these middlemen have extracted money, not even completed their training properly, not certified these trainees from India. And as a result, several Indian youth have been defrauded by fraudulent training institutes. So there is a need to regulate the training industry here, and the new law will take care of it. Understood? So these are the key provisions of the Merchant Shipping Bill, which is going to replace the Merchant Shipping Act of 1958. Now coming to coastal shipping. So we understood that coastal shipping until now was regulated under the British era law, the Coasting Vessels Act of 1838. So this will be replaced by the Coastal Shipping Bill of 2024. This law, which is being pushed by the government, it is in line with the objectives of Sagar Mala initiative, which is a flagship initiative of the Modi government. The Modi government has been pushing the promotion of coastal shipping and improvement of India's coastal infrastructure in order to improve connectivity so that even remote hinterlands and coastal areas can be connected with the coastline. It can improve cargo movement, reduce cost of transportation, and improve logistics, and even enable passenger traffic. So to enable coastal commercial shipping in India's waters in our exclusive economic zone, this new law is being introduced. It will do away with all the outdated colonial era provisions. It will introduce new provisions which are in line with our current requirements. It will facilitate commercial coastal shipping along India's coastline in India's waters within our EEZ. And it will basically promote the objectives of Sagar Mala initiative. It will help India emerge as a major shipping hub. And it would also transform India into a major transportation hub. So that is why these two bills are important. So if you can remember these provisions, understand the analysis, you should be able to answer any question, prelims or mains question. Now let's look at one mains question. What kind of question can be asked? India's merchant shipping and coastal shipping laws are outdated and are in dire need for a change. Examine. So for this question, you should always start out your introduction by talking about the outdated laws. You can directly introduce the outdated laws of 1958 and 1838 and provide a criticism of these laws. Point out why these laws are outdated. Mention some 4 or 5 points that we discussed. Or another good introduction would be to talk about the shipping industry in general and how India can play a pivotal role in the global shipping industry. And you can say that shipping industry is the backbone of the global economy, and it is essential that we have up-to-date laws. It's essential that we match global standards. So even that sets a good context for your introduction. Then in the body, discuss the provisions of these bills. Maybe the 4 to 5 provisions that we discussed under Merchant Shipping Bill and a couple of provisions from Coastal Shipping Bill. And even try to compare that, analyze how it compares with the outdated laws. Why the new bill is a much better version of the previous outdated laws. So that comparative analysis is very, very essential. You can't simply by heart and reproduce the provisions of the bill. That will not fetch you marks. You need to bring out some provisions, even if it's just 3 or 4 provisions. You need to provide a comparative analysis, how it compares with the old provision. So bring out that analysis here and then conclude your answer. Conclude by stating that these new laws will transform our merchant shipping and coastal shipping industry. It will put India on the global map. And as India emerges as a major economy, it's essential to transform our shipping industry. So something on those lines, something optimistic. Try to connect this with Viksit Bharat vision by 2047 and how shipping industry can be an enabler, right? Because laws are supposed to enable and facilitate. Laws are not supposed to be restrictive. They're not supposed only to regulate and restrict. Laws are supposed to facilitate and enable as well. So that is something you need to bring out in the conclusion. Now let's look at the next article on page number 9. This column focuses on overexploitation of India's workforce. How Indian workers are often abused, exploited, and overworked by Indian companies. This has emerged as a major concern, especially since there were recent incidents. For example, the unfortunate death of a employee, EY employee in Pune, and controversial statements by industry leaders who proclaim that Indian youth are lazy, they have to work for 70 hours, 80 hours, whatnot. Right? So this has brought up the limelight on the mental health, the dignity of Indian workers, and how it's getting abused by the Indian industry, how Indian workers are getting overexploited. See, generally there is this wrong presumption within the Indian industry. It's very unfortunate, even within the IT industry, services industry as well, that a worker is good only if they overwork. Only those who are working for 15, 16 hours, only they are considered as good employees. So this culture, which has developed in the Indian industry in general, is very toxic. It's a toxic work culture that the country is dealing with. Because if you look at other countries, that is not the case. Workers have their own rights. They have a right to dignity, a right to disconnect. So the writer is essentially batting for right to disconnect for Indian workers. See, you have to work hard. There is no other alternative. In life, whatever you do, be it a competitive exam, be it the job that you're doing, your business that you're running, right, or a hobby that you're pursuing, whatever it is, hard work is essential. But hard work doesn't mean you work like a slave, right? And also, working more hours is not a sign of efficiency. It's not a sign of productivity. It could also mean that that worker is not efficient. He's taking more time to complete that task. Now, what if there are efficient employees who are doing that same task within 9 hours or 8 hours? Once their work hours are done, they should have no obligation of any sort to the company. Be it receiving calls or mails outside of work hours, or getting urgent assignments post work hours, or when an employee is on leave or vacation. This is something that has become a norm in the Indian industry, where workers are expected. It has become a burden that you're expected to respond to every message and mail at any point in time, even in the middle of the night, even when you're not keeping well, even when you're attending a family function or an event, or even when you're grieving the loss of a close family member. So this toxic work culture has been encouraged by India's industry leaders, right? Now, if you compare this with other countries, in France, for example, the French Supreme Court has passed a mandate that outside of work hours, employees need not respond to their employers. They need not work outside of the mandated work hours. Generally, it is 8 to 9 hours. In most countries, it might vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But outside of work hours, most countries don't expect their employees to be accountable or answerable to their employers. You look at Portugal, for example. Portugal has a law that provides right to disconnect to the workers. Once you're done with your work, you can switch off your phone. You need not answer any message or call or mail. You need not take up any work, no matter how urgent it is. Unless and until it's a business contingency or an absolute emergency, which is justified. The law in Portugal does not allow companies to abuse or exploit their workers. If there is a violation, those companies will be penalized heavily by the Portuguese government. In Spain as well, the Spanish government has used the data protection regime of European Union, the GDPR, and under the right to privacy, it has protected its workers and employees from any abuse and overexploitation. Employees have been given a right to lead a private life after their work hours, right? There is no mixture of your personal life with your work life. That balance has been struck in countries like Spain. So I can go on and give many examples like this. We have Australia, which recently brought out a law for fair work. It prohibits employees from working outside of work hours, and companies can't take any kind of action for that. Even Ireland has brought in a legislation that provides for right to disconnect. Once you're done with your work, you can completely disconnect and completely stay away from your workplace. So when countries are setting such examples, India is nowhere close to guaranteeing these basic rights to its workers. Now, it's not that we don't have a framework. We do have a framework. Look at the Constitution of India. Under the Indian Constitution, we have DPSPs, Directive Principles of State Policy. What does Article 38 mandate the state? Students of polity who have gone through the Indian Constitution would know this. Article 38 directs the Indian state to ensure that its policies are meant for the welfare of the people of the country. Welfare of people would obviously include welfare of workers as well. Then we have Article 39, Clause E, which is specific to the health and strength of our workers. This provision of Directive Principles of State Policy, it directs the state to ensure that its policies are directed towards securing the health and the strength of our workers. So this is a specific provision directing the state to take care of the workers and protect them, ensure their health and well-being. Because there are studies which have established that overwork is detrimental to our physical and mental health. Overwork, abusive and toxic work condition has been directly held responsible not only for mental distress, anxiety, depression, or eventually pushing some employees to commit suicide, but it is also responsible for obesity, a sedentary lifestyle, and associated health complications, including diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, etc. Trust me, no job or no work is worth your health and your family. Right? This is a mantra that Indians in general have to remember. Yes, work is worship, work is important. As I said, hard work is absolutely necessary, but within the work hours. So in front of your own health, your family, nothing else should be a priority. Unfortunately, Indian industry has cultivated this work ethic. Again, there might be exceptions, right? We don't like to generalize. There will be exceptions where some companies have fantastic work cultures. But there are organizations which have encouraged this as a positive trend. They see this as a sign of productivity, as a sign of proactive workers, right? And workers who overwork often get rewarded, promoted. And this in a way sets a wrong example. Because there are studies which shows that this is counterproductive to the industry itself, to the economy itself. There is a study by Harvard Business Review which shows that any such work pressure, it adds to the mental, physical stress on the worker, affecting their productivity eventually. There are countries which provide mandatory leaves, vacations, so that employees are sent on a break to refresh, rejuvenate. But in India, employees have to give excuses. They have to lie to the company to take leaves, right? So you need not provide a justification to take your mandated leaves. But that has become the unfortunate situation. In fact, this is not just in India. This is largely an Asian culture. You go to Japan, South Korea, China, Southeast Asia, overworking is seen as a positive trait. Singapore has a horrible toxic work culture. Japan is known for its toxic work culture. In that regard, India is much better. So it's high time to protect the right to dignity of our workers and provide the right to disconnect. Because the writer points out that there are many instances in Indian industry where workers are often abused, verbally abused, or mentally abused by their superiors. It has become a norm for, let's say, managers to shout at their employees in meetings in front of everyone, to humiliate them for mistakes that might have happened, right? So this kind of culture, these practices are not tolerable. They cannot be allowed in the industry. Hence, the writer is strongly supporting a legal measure, because there was one such private member's bill which was pushed by Supriya Sule, MP, in 2018. She had proposed a private member's bill which would penalize such companies which are abusing workers and violating the provisions, because that can act as a deterrent. There is a need to encourage a healthy work environment, because studies have again shown, there is an Oxford study which has established that a relaxed worker would be more productive, would contribute more and better to the organization than a stressed, exploited worker. But unfortunately, industry leaders don't realize that, and that is where the problem lies. So this is where the government will have to step in, according to the writer of this column. Even under the Vishaka case, which brought out guidelines against harassment at workplace, specifically sexual harassment. In this, the Supreme Court specifically spoke about right to dignity of workers at workplace. There are similar Supreme Court rulings where Supreme Court has expressed concern about the lack of respect and dignity given to workers. And it has urged the government to frame policies to prevent such toxic, abusive culture and practices in the workplace. So that is what you need to learn from this article. India must recognize that the right to disconnect will increase productivity and ensure the overall growth and well-being of employees and as well as the employers. Discuss. So for such a question, right, you need to provide as many examples as possible, like we were discussing, and try to provide this analysis. Try to quote studies which have shown that productivity suffers when employees are abused and overworked. Whereas the opposite also has been established. Employees perform better, they thrive. Thus, the organization will also thrive when employees are not under stress, when their growth and well-being, their dignity is taken care of. So this is where a legal intervention becomes necessary. Now let's look at the next article. On page 8, we have this article that highlights the two pressing challenges that the world is facing currently. One is food insecurity. The second is energy insecurity. And they are interdependent. The world is facing a shortage of food, a critical shortage of food. Rising population, climate change, global warming, which is causing extreme weather events, more droughts and fires and floods, cyclones. They are destroying crops, affecting agricultural productivity. Rising population is only creating more mouths to feed, and we haven't really improved our ability to produce more food. Even though we produce sufficient food, we are not able to ensure the right supply, the right delivery to the target beneficiaries. On the other hand, energy insecurity has been a norm in modern world, primarily due to geopolitical tensions. Supply of essential fossil fuels, crude oil to natural gas, and other sources of energy. These supply chains have often been disrupted because of geopolitical tensions and conflicts. So there are major risk factors that are threatening food security and energy security around the world. Because if countries don't take care of this, this will directly contribute to global instability. We have seen many instances of hunger and malnutrition triggering civil wars. Food insecurity can become a factor for instability. Energy insecurity, again, as a result of geopolitical tensions, could result in wars between countries, conflicts, covert wars. This could destabilize entire regions and the world with lasting consequences for everyone. In an interconnected world, these problems have a detrimental impact on every single human being on the planet. A study shows that 11.8% of the global population suffered from food insecurity between 2020 to 2023. Now, can you imagine this? In just a span of 3 years, in the last 3 years essentially, close to 12% of the global population witnessed food insecurity of some level. Hunger, malnutrition has been experienced by millions and millions of people. That is the world we live in. Parallelly, there is enormous food wastage which is happening, right? There are countries which are producing sufficient food, but they're not able to ensure that it reaches the right plate. So these are serious governance-related challenges. So it requires initiatives from national governments. It requires global-level initiatives as well to tackle the problems of food insecurity and energy insecurity. Now let's explore this topic further. Let's look at this a little deeper. Now, if you look at food security, it is obviously dependent on agricultural productivity. Agricultural productivity plays a direct role, and agriculture consumes 70% of the water resources that we use. It accounts for nearly 20% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So on one hand, agriculture is putting strain on the environment as well. On the other side, agricultural productivity is taking a hit because of climate change, global warming, extreme weather events, as we discussed. Now, to improve productivity, there are certain inputs that are needed. For example, better quality seeds, fertilizers, and also you can reduce wastage by improving storage facilities and supply chains and logistics, right? You can improve logistics and warehousing, cold storage facilities in the supply chain. So many such steps are necessary to ensure agricultural productivity is promoted. We should not only ensure that we produce more with better seeds and better inputs and fertilizers, we should also ensure that whatever we harvest, there should be post-harvest management through better warehousing, logistics and back-end supply chains, with investments in food processing technology, with investments in cold storage facilities. We should ensure that we protect the productivity of our agriculture, ensure the food doesn't go to waste, and supply the food to the right plates to ensure people don't go hungry. Now, to ensure all these activities, you need energy. Every single step in agriculture is dependent on energy. Now, let's say for developing and supplying high quality seeds, energy is necessary, right? There would be consumption of electricity, consumption of fuel, or even for irrigation. Farmers depend on water pumps, right, which are powered. So there is a need for electricity. What is the source of that electricity? Is it coming from thermal power or clean energy, right? Then look at fertilizers, for example. Fertilizers are highly dependent on fossil fuel sources, especially natural gas. There is a great dependency on fertilizer production and with regard to natural gas availability. Natural gas is necessary for the process of fertilizer production. At least 80% of natural gas used in fertilizer industry goes towards the process of producing the fertilizer, because natural gas is a feedstock. It is used in synthesizing ammonia, a key constituent of most fertilizers. The other 20%, right, it powers the entire process of producing that fertilizer. So, supply of natural gas is subjected to geopolitical tensions. Now, take for example the collapse of Syria or a crisis in West Asia, right? This will directly disrupt the supply chains. It could affect global oil and energy prices. Or imagine a crisis in Red Sea. For example, how the Houthis from Yemen would target the ships, the oil-carrying ships. And this disrupted the movement of ships carrying oil and gas. It led to the shoot up of these prices as well, causing volatility in the oil markets. So such instability created by geopolitical tensions will affect energy availability, energy supplies. This will disrupt fertilizer production, increase the cost of fertilizers, which will make them unaffordable for farmers. And eventually, farmers, if they don't use such fertilizers, it will result in a drop in agricultural productivity. And this in turn will contribute to food insecurity. And it again continues the vicious cycle. It further adds to global instability. So this is a vicious cycle. And to break that cycle, we need to work together. Countries have to work together to address the problems of food insecurity and energy insecurity. See, countries have a lot of dependency on global supply chains. For example, India, we have a 60% import dependency for DAP, diammonium phosphate, a critical fertilizer. 60% of our DAP is imported from the outside. And most of the supply chain is controlled by China. So for geopolitical reasons, if China were to disrupt the supplies, Indian agriculture would be severely hit. So these are the challenges that need to be addressed. And studies have established that we just need around $300 to $400 billion every year to solve the problems of food and energy insecurity. The World Food Security Outlook, it has observed that to ensure the basic calorific needs of the most vulnerable population in the world by 2030, we need around $90 billion every year. Then to transform the global food systems, we would need a collective $300 to $400 billion annually, which is barely 0.5% of the global GDP. This is a sum which can be easily mobilized by countries around the world to help solve the problems of food insecurity and energy insecurity. And this in turn will provide for global stability. This could even act as a buffer against geopolitical conflicts and tensions. It could address socio-economic problems from poverty to hunger to health-related issues that arise out of malnutrition. So eventually everything is connected. And the writers correctly point out that energy insecurity, food insecurity are at the root of most of the other problems, from geopolitical problems to economic and health-related problems. They're all connected. So solving these problems will require the will of the countries, right? They need to come together, mobilize the required resources, bring more efficiency in the supply chains. And that is essentially the argument being made by the writers of this column. Now, moving on, let's look at another interesting article on page number 8 that focuses on Trump 2.0, the second edition of Donald Trump. How would Trump's presidency affect global geopolitics? What would it mean for India? So this is what the writer of the column is exploring. The writer is none other than M.K. Narayanan, former director of Intelligence Bureau, former National Security Advisor under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and as well as a former governor of the state of West Bengal. So he brings his incredible expertise to analyze the victory of Donald Trump in the recent presidential elections, his rhetoric, his political ideology, the controversial statements he has made, the kind of disruption he has caused in American politics, and what would this mean for the entire world. The writer correctly observes that Donald Trump is no ordinary politician, right? Because Donald Trump can speak about the unthinkable. He's known for being an erratic leader driven by a conservative, slightly radical ideology as well, a far right-wing ideology. And in many ways, he brings forward disruptive ideas which are considered as unthinkable otherwise. I mean, this need not be in a good way. This could be in a bad way as well. Now, for example, Trump believes that NATO is a useless organization. Trump has been very vocal about this. Trump has criticized the European partners of NATO, and Trump believes that the United States is carrying the entire burden of NATO, which is true to an extent as well. If you look at the financial support that US gives to NATO, it's much significantly higher proportionally as compared to what European partners are contributing. And also European countries, in a way, they had gone into a slumber after the stability that was seen in 60s and 70s and 80s post-World War. European countries, in a way, became complacent about their own security and defense. So no wonder they were completely unprepared when Russia all of a sudden started throwing its aggression at Ukraine and other European countries. So this is where Trump believes that why should US pay for European security? Why can't European countries which have the required resources contribute more? So in this regard, Trump might actually carry out a big disruption. He might end up pulling US out of NATO or forcing European countries to contribute more, which in a way might be good for the military alliance and for global stability as well. But the global focus right now is on whether Trump will be able to end the current wars and conflicts. Because don't forget, Trump is a businessman, essentially, right? He runs a business empire, and obviously, as a capitalist, he is business-minded, profit-minded, and that is what comes as a top priority for Donald Trump. That's where the idea of America first, making America great again, comes from. To ensure Americans get all the jobs, to ensure imports are reduced, we levy high tariffs on other countries which are exploiting the American market, right? And the push towards an inward-looking conservative economy, it comes from the business mind of Donald Trump. So for Donald Trump, ideology or let's say values, principles doesn't matter as much as the business economic interests. And in a way, again, it could be good. Why? Because this might push United States to ensure that it exerts the right influence to bring the current conflicts to an end. The conflict in Ukraine, the conflict in Gaza has caused enormous human suffering and geopolitical disruption. So Trump, given his influence with Russia, with Putin, compared to Biden, Trump is seen as much more favorable towards Putin. And given his approach towards Ukraine, It's believed that Trump might exert his pressure and influence to bring both parties together, try to end the Ukraine war. Or if not end the war, Trump might ensure US will pull out support to Ukraine. But this could also leave Ukraine vulnerable, which could embolden Russia for further assault on Ukraine and maybe across Eastern Europe. Because if you see what's happened in Georgia, there are allegations that Russia has interfered with the recent elections. It has triggered a huge controversy and revolt against the pro-Russian government in Georgia. So Russia might either get emboldened, right? Or Trump might play a positive role to bring the conflict to an end. It could go either ways. Then coming to West Asia, Trump is someone who has always targeted Iran. Sometimes it has been justified, but sometimes it has been unnecessary. For example, the way Trump quit Iran nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and imposed very severe sanctions on Iran when he was the president in the first term. This crippled the Iranian economy. In a way, it pushed Iran to get more aggressive. Now, Iran has started enriching uranium again, as we have discussed in previous classes. Iran stepped up its support for its proxies, from Hezbollah to Hamas, which in a way, maybe somewhere, contributed to the current crisis as well. So the return of Trump, his hostile policy towards Iran, could be bad news for West Asia. But given that Iran has been subdued and weakened, its proxies have been weakened, Hezbollah has been wiped out, Hamas is under significant pressure in Gaza, it might even be wiped out by Israel. The Houthis will be tackled with a joint coalition of Israel, US and UK. So given that Iran is on the back foot, facing a big setback, Trump could further use this opportunity to subdue Iran. Don't forget, Iran has just lost its biggest ally, Syria. Assad has been kicked out. So this represents a big setback for Iran. So we might be in for a massive transformation of West Asian geopolitics. We might even see the decline of Iran or even the end of Iran's domination, a collapse of the Shia world order and the domination of the West, Israel and the Sunni world order. So this could reshape West Asia entirely, and this is of great consequence for India. We have major stakes in the region, from energy interests to investments to our Indian diaspora. And it is also hoped that Trump will bring some pressure on Israel. Israel has almost been given a free hand by Biden's administration with all the financial support and weapon support, which Israel has used to decimate Gaza, and it has triggered a humanitarian tragedy by using disproportionate force. It's alleged to have committed a genocide, war crimes. So Trump, again, who is business-minded, who doesn't believe in wars and conflicts, he doesn't believe in American involvement in faraway conflicts. That could be a good thing. It might reduce American interference. It might lead US to pull support for Israel and push Israel to settle for a ceasefire, which is good for the region. Right? So there are countries which feel threatened, European countries, for example, American allies from Canada to UK to Japan, right? They all have concerns regarding the erratic policies of Trump. The multilateral world order might be disrupted, which might be bad for United Nations, WTO, climate change convention, because last time Trump had withdrawn from Paris Agreement. So these could be the disruptions which could have either a negative or positive effect. Now, what's in it for India? See, Trump's enemy number one has always been China. Trump has always seen China as an economic, strategic, diplomatic, and a military threat. But the writer says Trump is not foolish enough to go pick a conflict with China. Again, given his business mind, right? It tells him that you should avoid conflicts because conflicts are bad for business. So, writer is quite confident that there won't be any kind of conflict between US and China, at least a military engagement. But issues like Taiwan or Chinese aggression in Indo-Pacific, this is something that could blow up. This is where US might get more aggressive. Parallelly, in the economic domain, Trump has already promised a trade war, levying high tariffs to block out the cheap imports from countries like China, even India, which could even be an economic hit for several countries. So this is where India should be careful and India should watch out. Because if you look at India-US trade, India does have a trade surplus. And Trump, when he was the president in the previous term, he had openly criticized India's trade policies, and he waged a trade war against India as well by levying higher tariffs. He suspended the GSP status for India. the generalized system of preferences, which gave preferential treatment for Indian exports into the American market. This facility was withdrawn by Trump. So Trump has been bad news as well. But however, given that China is a common concern, a common threat for both India and US, the writer believes that this could be good for India. And also don't forget, Trump and Modi, they share a good personal bond and chemistry, a similar world view and world outlook, and a similar ideological view as well. So this, the writer believes, could be good for India, as Trump would like to strengthen alliances in Indo-Pacific with groupings like the Quad. Since for Trump, China is enemy number one, to counter China, Trump would need Japan, Trump would need South Korea, Australia, and of course, India. So for these countries in Indo-Pacific, it could be good news under Trump administration, but in the economic domain, there's no guarantee. The erratic policies could hurt India's trade and India's exports. Trump could end up dismantling the multilateral world order, which is again bad news for India, because India strongly believes in a multilateral world order. This could be bad news for European countries and other American allies. And with regard to the conflicts, Ukraine, Gaza, and tensions across West Asia, it could go either ways. But whatever it is, at the end of the day, one thing is for sure. Trump's regime will bring more chaos, more instability, for sure. Because any sudden disruption, either for good or bad, will lead to a chaotic global environment. This could even escalate, leading to more conflicts, more tensions. Right? The writer even indicates to a potential third world war if things are not handled well. But the other side is also possible, where such disruption might be needed. A Trump kind of erratic disruption might be needed to throw out the old world order and to bring in a new world order, which could end America's unnecessary interference in regions around the world, which has been the source of conflicts. So let's wait and watch how things will develop, but this is what India should look out for. Now let's move to the prelim section. Let's wrap up the discussion by quickly taking a look at the prelim section. We have this interesting data point on page number 9 that focuses on the abuse of antibiotics in the animal husbandry industry. See, antibiotics have played a critical role in increasing life expectancy, not only for humans, but for animals as well. Essentially, they're used to fight bacterial infections. Antibiotics were the biggest breakthrough of mankind, as this directly improved health, human health and animal health, and improved life expectancy and gave us the ability to tackle most of the bacterial infections. But concern with antibiotics is the abuse, the overuse of antibiotics. I'm sure you know that abuse of antibiotics will lead to microbial resistance. The microbes would evolve to resist the first and second line of antibiotics, which could essentially set us back as far as our scientific medical advancements are concerned. If the first and second line of antibiotics become ineffective against these resistant pathogens, right, that would be the biggest nightmare for the entire world. Now, the concern is that in animal husbandry industry, antibiotics are blatantly abused. Be it in cultivation of chickens, pigs, sheep, or cattle, there is large-scale abuse of antibiotics. One, of course, is to protect the health of the animals, which is necessary, of course, to prevent infections, to treat infections. Definitely, some level of usage of antibiotics is necessary. Just like we use antibiotics minimally, only in case of severe infections. Similarly, for animals as well, antibiotics can be useful. But around the world, there is this deadly practice of overusing antibiotics. Because one, these industries or farmers or industries or companies which maintain such farm animals, they may not create the required space. They might keep animals confined in very small spaces, which will make them prone to diseases and infections, right? So they don't allow the animals to maintain social distance. So as a result, what they do is they go for cheaper antibiotics. Instead of buying more land, creating more space for these animals so they can be separated and infections don't pass easily, they invest less on land and use more antibiotics because antibiotics are dirt cheap. And they keep administering antibiotics for the animals so that they don't catch an infection. This is building up microbial resistance, right? And in several countries where regulations are very lax, Antibiotics are used to trigger meat growth, increase milk production. Now, this is where the abuse of antibiotics becomes deadly for human health. Correct? A study has established that with regard to chickens, we are seeing the least antibiotic contamination. A residue of 35 milligrams per kg of chicken meat is found. When you look at cattle, right, cows, buffaloes, etc., 60 milligrams of antibiotic residue is found in per kg of meat. Pigs report the next highest level, 173 milligrams, especially in countries where pork meat is a staple, like Thailand, Vietnam, China. People are exposed to higher levels of antibiotic residue, which could be a detrimental issue for human health. But sheep has the highest concentration level, 243 milligrams for producing per kg meat. So in India, the study shows that 114 milligrams of antibiotics for every kg of meat as of 2020. This places India on the 30th list, on the 30th position out of 190 countries. It shows that in India, antibiotic usage and abuse is quite high in our animal husbandry industry. Now, how do you tackle this threat? How do you regulate the overuse of antibiotics in animal husbandry? Of course, you can't just ban it. Banning usage of antibiotics is never conducive, because, as I said, it is necessary to prevent infections and treat infections, right? So if you look at Europe, look at the map here. It shows how across Asia, South America, there is overuse and abuse of antibiotics. But if you look at Europe, in Europe, there are strict regulations, strict laws, which are well implemented, well enforced, which ensures that there is no abuse of antibiotics in animal husbandry. In Africa as well, you see very limited abuse of antibiotics, not because there are strict laws. It's because the farmers here can't access them. The industries, they can't afford antibiotics. So Africa and Europe, they stand out for different reasons. Europe, because of strict laws and regulations which prohibit the abuse of antibiotics. Africa, primarily because most industries here, they can't afford the antibiotics. But rest of the world sees very high levels of antibiotic abuse, and this represents a severe health risk and a health concern. Studies have shown that this could even cause hormonal disruption. It's a growth disruptor as well. It could increase various chronic conditions, inflammations in the body, right? And could potentially even increase the chances of cancer. Clear? So there are studies pointing towards this, and yet the abuse of antibiotics continues. So that is something you should be aware of. And please note that antibiotic requirement in animal husbandry industry is the least for chickens, the highest for sheeps. All right, so that is one information you need to note down. Next, on page 14, there is an article referring to a very important government scheme launched by Prime Minister Modi recently, Ayushman Vandana Yojana. This is a healthcare scheme specifically meant for senior citizens above the age of 70 years. This is part of Ayushman Bharat, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. So under this, the Modi government launched one of the most appreciated initiatives, which is Ayushman Vandana Yojana, which provides a 5 lakh coverage, health insurance coverage for all senior citizens above 70 years, irrespective of their socio-economic status. Whether they belong to BPL, below poverty line families, or upper class rich families, doesn't matter. Senior citizens above 70 years, they're all eligible for this health cover of 5 lakh rupees, absolutely free of cost. So this provides immediate coverage right from the start of the policy period, right? It covers all pre-existing conditions without any wait period, covers up to 2,000 procedures. And already 25 lakh beneficiaries have registered. 25 lakh beneficiaries have registered themselves, and 22,000 senior citizens have got procedures and surgeries done at absolute zero cost. So if a family is already covered under Ayushman Bharat health cover, then those senior citizens will get an additional top-up of 5 lakh rupees more per year. So how do you register? If you have senior citizens in your family, you should know this. Either you go to a nearby empaneled hospital. If you visit Ayushman Bharat's website, You can find the entire list of empaneled hospitals. So go there for a registration, or even better, download the Ayushman app. Download the Ayushman app and you can easily register, or there's a toll-free number as well that you can call. So registration has been made very simple, and within few weeks of launch of this program, 25 lakh beneficiaries have registered. So that shows the success, the impact of this health program. Next, Bulgaria and Romania have become full members of Schengen zone, which is a free travel corridor created within the European Union. Earlier this March, Romania and Bulgaria, which are members of EU and NATO, they had partially joined the Schengen zone and they had opened up their maritime and air borders. But they hadn't been part of the free land border movement, cross-border movement across the land borders. And now they have decided to become full-time members of the Schengen zone. Initially, Austria had raised an objection. Austria was using its veto to block the full-time entry of Romania and Bulgaria, because Austria was concerned that this could lead to possible illegal migration and inflow of residents of Romania and Bulgaria into Austria. But now that concern has been addressed by other EU countries and with commitments from Romania and Bulgaria. So Austria has lifted its block, and these two countries, these two EU members, are joining the Schengen zone as full-time members. So what exactly is the Schengen area or the Schengen zone? It's basically a borderless system which has been created within European Union. It facilitates free movement of people, goods and vehicles that promotes economic and cultural relations. So some members of European Union, 25 out of 27 EU members, they are part of the Schengen Agreement. In 1985, the Schengen Agreement was signed. Schengen is a place in Luxembourg where the agreement was negotiated. So 25 of the 27 members have joined the Schengen zone, and essentially it abolishes the hard border controls. It removes hard border controls and creates an open border system, a complete open border system where EU citizens can travel from one member country to another without the need for a visa. They can settle down in those countries, study and work, and move around, acquire property as well. And it facilitates business as well. Right? So it's a huge boon for students, workers, investors, traders, and even tourists. So Romania, Bulgaria have decided to join. So earlier they had opened up only to the air and maritime arrangement, but now they are joining the land border arrangement as well. Now, which are these two countries which are EU members but have not joined the Schengen zone? This would be Cyprus and Ireland. Please note this down. There could be a prelims question. Only 25 out of 27 EU members are part of Schengen zone. The two other countries which have not joined Schengen zone, which are EU members, are Cyprus. Cyprus has said it will commit to Schengen agreement in the future, and Ireland has opted out. So these are the two EU members which are not part of the Schengen zone. But however, if you look at the Schengen countries, there are 29 European countries. So which means there are 4 more countries. These 4 countries are basically EFTA countries, European Free Trade Association members, with whom India also has signed a FTA recently. So that is Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Switzerland. So these 4 EFTA members, they are non-EU countries. They are not members of EU, but they have joined the Schengen zone. And there are these small micro-states within Europe. You have Vatican State, Andorra, Monaco, San Marino. These are very, very minute states, micro-states. So obviously, they're also part of the Schengen area. Is this clear? So please be aware of this open border system, which countries are part of it, and which EU members are not part of the Schengen zone. Coming to the last article for today. On the supplement page, where science and tech articles are published by Hindu, there's an article referring to the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. The current summit on desertification is taking place in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, where UN member countries are discussing about land degradation, which is becoming an increasing risk. Because rampant urbanization, deforestation, industrialization leads to degradation of land. And eventually degraded land turns into a desert, expanding the desert area. So global warming, climate change is adding to it. Extreme weather is contributing to increased desertification. So one way is to protect the land, recover the degraded land, and restore the fertility, and ensure that you promote afforestation and tackle deforestation. So countries are working together under this UN convention to work out an agreement, a solution through which they can combat desertification. So this convention was adopted in 1994, following the Rio Earth Summit of 1992. The Rio Earth Summit is one of the most important environment-related summits. It brought out Agenda 21, Agenda for 21st Century, Environmental Agenda for 21st Century. It's through the Rio Summit that Climate Change Convention was born, the UNFCCC, UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Even the CBD Convention, Convention on Biological Diversity was born, and as well as UN Convention to Combat Desertification. So all UN members and few additional states are part of the Convention to Combat Desertification, and of course India is also party to it. So at Riyadh, the current summit is taking place where countries are trying to work out solutions to combat desertification and to recover degraded land. So this is something you need to note down. So with this, I complete my discussion of today's The Hindu newspaper. I hope you guys have liked the session and understood all the topics that we have discussed. Now, if you want the PDF of this class, please join my Telegram channel, scan the QR code. I will be sharing the PDF in a while. Also join our official Telegram channel of Unacademy IAS English. For this, the link is in the video description. After the session ends, we'll conduct a daily quiz. We'll give you practice MCQs so that you can revise these topics and prepare for the upcoming prelims exam. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the class. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to tune in again at 7 p.m. as we mark the 9th anniversary of Unacademy. So this event, this mega online event, goes live on UPSC Unstoppable's YouTube channel. So search for UPSC Unstoppable's YouTube page and click on Notify Me on the live stream which has been scheduled, and join us at 7 p.m. to meet all your educators, top influencers, and some exciting events will be there. Plus there will be some big reveals as well. So see you tonight at 7 p.m. Till then, take care. Have a good day.